Hello there, I'm Chris Vadney here with Will Chukerman at Memorial Stadium following an Indiana loss 45-28. And Will, it was the offense that let Indiana down early.
Yeah, it was the Indiana offense just really not getting off to that start that we're so typical of seeing Indiana's offense going out, scoring maybe on their first drive, if not their second drive. But tonight, it was just Nate Sudfeld not being as clean and crisp as we've seen in the past. He still didn't have a bad first half, but it wasn't great. And the way Missouri was scoring, they needed great offense.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And but the defense early was actually coming up with some pretty big plays. Greg David came up with a couple big picks. And how do you think the fact that the offense stalled following those interceptions hurt them?
Oh, it definitely hurt them. Kevin Wilson's talked about this really that whole season. You can't allow teams to get out in Indiana for them to spot points. And the defense did a great job. It was really a bend and not break. They didn't have a great first half, but they got the turnovers when they needed. And then it was up to that offense to just kind of pick them up and score off those, and they weren't able to do it. And you really need that team effort to come together, and it just didn't happen.
And I'm going to ask you the question. We saw a lot of Trey Roberson in this game. Is it fair to still use the word quarterback controversy?
Kevin Wilson says it's not fair, but if he continues to put Trey Roberson in the game, there is I don't know if you want to say controversy, but there is something to be said that both quarterbacks continue to play. And it was when Nate Sudfeld was struggling, Trey Roberson came into the game. So you leave us, the media, to wonder, is there a controversy? He says no, but when you look at the stats, when you look at when Trey Roberson came in, and the fact that the game was still close at that point, and that's what a lot of people were kind of saying to each other, that Nate Sudfeld was on the sideline, he had his helmet on, he was ready to go, and the game was within reach. But Trey Roberson came into that game, and Kevin Wilson wanted Trey Roberson to lead the comeback and not Nate Sudfeld.
And especially, Sudfeld was essentially pulled almost after that pick six.
Yeah.
And it was essentially not his fault. He talked about it in the postgame that it was more of a blocking mishap or miscall for whatever thing. And it almost seems like that's not a fair time to pull a quarterback. What do you think?
It's really tough, and I'm not inside the meetings, I'm not inside the locker room at halftime, and I'm not necessarily I'm not in the meetings listening to what plays called. And yeah, it's really tough when Nate Sudfeld does have a pretty good first half. They were moving the ball on this Missouri defense, and then he does get pulled. He didn't play that whole third quarter, and then he came in for a drive in the fourth quarter, and then he came back out. But it is tough, and it's really difficult for these quarterbacks to say, should I be warming up now? Should I be warming up later? There's not a controversy, but you're leaving it up to these players now think, in the back of their mind, if I make one false move, I could be coming out of the game. And that's not the sense of security you want your starting quarterback to have.
Absolutely. And the defense gave up over 600 yards of offense in this game, but it was almost garbage time yards, really. Do you think there's anything serious? Do you think the defense took a step backwards this week relative to last week?
I don't know if they took I think actually if you were to say based off last week, yes, they took a step back because they played pretty well against Bowling Green. And this is the performance we saw against Navy, that just Missouri was really able to do everything they wanted on the ground. But for the most part, they weren't getting those huge gains that you see a 50, a 60-yard play. It was really just 10 yards here, 12 yards there, 17 yards there. And it was just something that built up over time, and Missouri just ran enough plays where they got those 623 yards. It looks a lot worse, I think, than it was during the course of the game.
That's the impression I got as well. Any other thoughts from the game in general?
No, it was just one of those games where I think that Indiana, I don't know if I want to say they needed to win, but this was a big game for them. And if they won this game, it was going to give them a lot of momentum going into this bye week and saying, you know what, we can come out and we can beat Penn State. That's a team that's pretty capable of us beating, and they're really on Missouri's level. And now you go back to the drawing board, and it's really tough because win-loss, they got to get some momentum going forward if they want to have success for the rest of the season. And they're at 2 wins. They got to win 4 games in the Big Ten if they want to even be considered for a bowl game.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we've been hearing throughout the press box and whatnot, is that 4-win mark for the Big Ten schedule. Do you think that hey, it's a little early, but do you think that they get there?
If I was to make a prediction, I don't think they get there. I don't think they win 4 games. I think 3 is a reasonable expectation. You look at Minnesota, Illinois, and Purdue being those winnable games. So I don't think it's going to happen, but I'd be shocked one way or another if it happened.
Well, I believe that's about all we have here from Memorial Stadium. I'm Chris Vadney, along with Will Chukerman. Thanks for joining us.